Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Rali Sethi, and it is my privilege to welcome you to this roundtable discussion, hosted as a part of Public Policy Cluster of Nickel and Dime, the official research platform for the Center of New Economic Studies. Today, we are gathered here to explore the topic of immense importance, the significance of Russia and the global economy. And as we all know, Russia has always held a unique position in the global economic landscape. And as one of the world's largest economies, it possesses vast reserves of natural resources, particularly in energy and minerals, making it a crucial supplier to international markets. And additionally, Russia's geopolitical influence and participation in international organizations such as United Nations and BRICS contribute to shaping global economic policies. However, the country's economy is not without its challenges, and including its susceptibility to fluctuations in commodity prices and the impact of international sanctions. So over the next hour, our panelists Revati and Gilles will dwell into the various aspects of Russia's economic presence on the global stage, its challenges, the opportunities, and the implications for the international community. To start off the discussion, the first question that I would like to pose for our panelists would be, how has Russia's economy changed in the past 10 years, and what would you say that has caused it to grow or shrink? Revati, would you like to add?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Revati. So, I think before we jump into this discussion, I just want to first set the stage of what has happened until now, how the war in Ukraine has affected Russia militarily, geopolitically, and economically. So, I think we can all agree that Russia's performance in the Ukraine war has been underwhelming to say the least. Militarily, the at the beginning of the war, the plan was to topple Kiev and to take control. Russia often bragged that Ukraine would fall in a couple of days. Well, that hasn't happened, mostly because of lack of manpower, underperformance of the military. And so I think somewhere around after February, after Moscow invaded Ukraine, they realized that toppling Kiev wouldn't be possible. So they changed their plan from capturing Kiev into they changed their plan to say that we will only occupy the Donbas region of Luhansk and Donetsk, just east of the Dnieper River. And now what was supposed to be, like a surgical operation of going and toppling Kiev has now extended into a long drawn out war of attrition, which Russia, as we can see today, is just not able to maintain. So how has this affected Russia economically? First of all, we can we've noticed that over the last 10 years, the trend has been that there's been a serious decline in Russian export of arms. The main product that Russia used to export was a lot of military equipment. They used to export oil. All that has dropped. There has been a recent study conducted by The Economist has said that there has been a 26% decrease in the arms export of Russia. And recent studies have also shown that since the Ukraine war has started, the position that Russia is in now, right now, it's going to take them 10 years to get back to the position that they were in before the war in Ukraine. More than 1,000 companies have exited Russia, and because of Putin's policy of forced to lend to the war in Ukraine, a lot of people have left Russia. They've fled to neighboring countries like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Mongolia, Belarus, etc., to avoid that conscription of joining the army because they just don't want to fight in Ukraine. So what that's led to is so much of manpower who could have otherwise worked in companies lent to the labor force in Russia. They've lost more than 1 million people who could have otherwise been workers and contributed to GDP. Next is the European Union's response to dependence on Russian oil. Earlier, we saw that Europe was extremely dependent on Russian oil and Russia's crude oil. A lot of the situation was that a lot of pipelines that transported Russian oil, they were designed specifically in a way that they were suited only to transport Russian oil. Now, Europe switched to liquefied natural gas. That's messed up Russia pretty badly because Gazprom, which is the main supplier of oil in Russia, is now facing a deficit in demand. Nobody's buying from them. So if they have to switch to the new demand of liquefied natural gas, which they currently don't provide in as much a quantity as they do crude oil, that's going to be extremely expensive, and that's not going to be something that can be done very fast. So I would say economically, Russia is in an extremely bad position right now. And um, this decline has been coming. It's not been more of a shocking decline. It's been a long time coming, but it's definitely the war in Ukraine has definitely been a catalyst in that decline, and it has speeded up the process of Russia becoming more and more irrelevant in the global economy.
Has certainly been on a steady path. And I just had a question. So, how do you think that it is doing politically? Because recently there's a power constraint, and Putin might not be in power after a few years. So, how would you think that would react to Russia and like how the governments would do?
Could you repeat your question? Who's not in power?
I'm saying how would the political sanction would do, like you said about the economic side. Now, how would you think about the political effect that is happening on Russia? Because but there's election constraint in the country right now, and Putin might not be in power after a few years. So there's military conflict going on. How would you say that Russia's position is?
Russia's political position. That's an extremely interesting discussion because, first of all, I want to unpack some of the delusions that the West is functioning under because I think that even now, even today, Joe Biden is functioning under this delusion that somehow he feels that Vladimir Putin is not going to be in power very soon. He feels that uh, there's going to be a different leader, and I think this is rooted in the deep assumption that as long as Vladimir Putin is in power, there can be nothing that can be done to improve the situation because Putin is as defiant as he is. I think that that's an extremely misguided notion because first of all, there are a multitude of reasons why Vladimir Putin is going absolutely nowhere in the current scenario. First one is because of the way Russian politics is. So there's something in Russian politics known as established autocracy, which a lot of scholars have spent time in understanding, and that is basically because Russian politics is designed in such a way that everybody around Putin, all the the chief, the former deceased chief of Wagner, the Yevgeny Prigozhin, all of them benefited from the fact that Putin was in power. So we all know that Wagner had a guns for gold scheme in Africa. Putin would allow them to go into Africa, protect dictators, and in return, Wagner was allowed to mine gold, mine diamonds, which would in turn, uh, go into the pockets of very corrupt politicians. So an, an enormous amount of people are actually benefiting from the fact that Putin is the president of Russia. So I don't think that Putin is going anywhere soon because reason number one, there are way too many people who are extremely happy that he's president. And number two is that if the US or Joe Biden thinks that there's going to be a coup or people are, his subjects, the people of Russia are going to be extremely unhappy with him that they throw him out of power. That's never happened in Russia. That's just absolutely impossible. One, because Russia's military is so stretched right now. Their arms production is so stretched. They aren't able to. People are fleeing because they don't want to be a part of the military. I really don't see that situation turning into people fighting, people gathering together to throw Putin out of power. And lastly, Putin, for someone to be thrown out of power, you would people really have to dislike you for that. Vladimir Putin's approval ratings, he has a, he has a beyond 75% approval rating even today, and that's because of a different reason that the media is absolutely state controlled. Vladimir Putin has control over what people watch on the screen. So there's absolutely no reason that he wouldn't be in power in the near future because he's way too popular. There's nobody who's going to overthrow him, and there are way too many people who are extremely happy that he's president. So the delusion that the West has that we're going to wait for Putin to go and then we're going to talk. That's an extremely misguided notion. And if that is their current plan, then I'm sorry, they're going to have to wait a very long
That is true, and I completely agree, especially with the fact that Putin is so highly
time.
backed up
I
by
can
the
also talk
elites
about,
and technocrats.
their fantasy of if Putin were to go away. Definitely, for sure. So coming to the West's fantasy that one day Putin does go away. There are only two scenarios in which Putin does go away, and the first one is that Putin's dead. That's the first scenario in which they won't be dealing with Vladimir Putin. And the second scenario, extremely hypothetically, is that Ukraine wins, because currently people view Vladimir Putin as a hero, right? The only way that that much of resentment would culminate against Vladimir Putin is that if Ukraine wins decisively, and that means and what I mean by that is if Ukraine regains Crimea, they regain Donbass, they regain Luhansk, Donetsk, the entire east side of the Dnieper River, and NATO does not recede to their 1990s levels. So if Ukraine has a decisive and extremely clear win, that is when we can sort of expect the population to start grouping against Putin. But even in that case, even my argument is that even if Putin were to not be there tomorrow, I don't think the West should have extremely high hopes, because Putin is an autocrat, he's a dictator, right? And history has shown us that even if even if you remove a certain dictator, dictators are usually replaced by dictators. You can look at the Arab Spring that happened in 2011. Look at Sudan, look at Chad, look at Libya, look at Syria. Every single dictator that has been overthrown. Don't even look as far as the Arab Spring in 2011. Look at what happened in Niger. Extremely recently, their coup. A dictator was thrown, and instead of that country flourishing into a democracy with free and fair elections, it all it did was transition into just another autocracy. We can look at Mubarak Hosni in Egypt. We can look at Abdine Ali flourish into a vibrant democracy. That hasn't happened. It didn't happen in Niger. It didn't happen in Maldives, though it did under a while with Mohammed Nasheed in power. Maldives slowly slid back into dictatorship. So just because you throw out a dictator doesn't mean that a country will suddenly um, you know flourish into a democracy. So even if Putin were to not be there in power tomorrow, I don't think the future is extremely bright for the West to have a very good relationship with Russia.
That's true. Jill, would you like to add something to that?
Sure, like if about the how Russia has evolved its economy over the past decade, like about that, if I like, I'll mainly focus on the past decade about how
Or
Russia has.
whatever, yeah, whatever that feels best to you, or you wanna add like, or you would like to add to Revati's points that she just mentioned.
Uh, I agree totally with Revati's point about the future of Russia and Vladimir Putin's about his future. So I like Putin is nowhere going to go till now. Firstly, what I think is like Russia is Putin has a very strong control over Russia, and people are very supportive of him, as he told about the approval ratings of the media and how nationalistic people are in Russia about Putin and everything. So he's nowhere to go. I guess somewhere I just give me a second now. I read it somewhere about yeah. So I read it in an article like yesterday when I was researching about the topic. I read it that when Ukraine, if continues to make significant battlefield advances in it, if it reclaims almost all of its territories like Crimea, Donbass, Luhansk, and the whole East Ukraine, like what was seized from started the seizing which started in 2014, which happened again in 2020, which again started in 2022, and then Russia would of course face a very humiliating military defeat, and the Putin has Putin has justified his tenure by pledging to restore Russia's greatness and military strength. It of course won't military strength. It of course wanted to, Russia wanted to consolidate the whole USSR. It wanted to against, like it has this aim of Soviet Union, of again bringing back the glory of the Soviet Union. So and if many soldiers are killed, then this could lead to a significant blowback on the home front. Then most analysis of what could come tend to look at Putin's code and examine who among his inner circle could be a potential successor. Might be that Putin is thrown off. Like if Russia faces a defeat, like what Revati told, then there could be a chance that he is replaced by one of the more of a hardliner, who's Nikolai Patrushev. You might know his name. He is the council secretary of Russia right now. So people from his inner circle might took over, like what we had studied and like what I had read in an Animal Farm, the book by George Orwell. Like it was the same thing. So when a dictator goes and another dictator takes over in the name of providing freedom to everyone, so this the same thing will continue. Like the transformation from a dictatorship to a democracy is like if a country is into dictatorship for many years and many years, it's very, very difficult for the transition. So that is what I wanted to say about the future of Russia under. It's very difficult for Putin to go away. And I think the condition right now in Ukraine is like, I don't think Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russia war, it is more kind of a, like both of them are fighting continuously. It's a like deadlock over there. I think it's difficult for, it will take a long time. If Ukraine also wants to win, it will take a long time for it to win. And about the economy, I wanted to add few points. I wanted to show about what Russia was before the Ukraine war also. The economy of Russia before the Ukraine war also. So after the 2008 crisis, Russia had a strong recovery, which started from 2009. The fiscal spending from the government was very much like, this is the problem that America faced. Like after 2008, America just did a very good monetary policy. It kept a very low interest rate, but did not do much of fiscal stimulus. That is what Russia did. So it had a very good, strong recovery, which started from 2009. And as we know that it has abundant natural resources, which depends upon oil and energy export. So all of these high energy exports, it led to high living standards, high disposable income, high fiscal spending, and monetary policy helped Russia a lot. In 2011, it also joined World Trade Organization, and rapid income and growth continued until 2013. And then trap happened.
And it's quite interesting to see how Russian societies, like its ability to adapt was underestimated. Even if you look at this current time, alongside the difference of most people to political events or like facility of adaptation, Russia has been on a steady path. And even though like we do say that it has not been doing economically well, but there's no add difference such because it's buying oil from India, whether from different routes.
Sure.
So everything is happening, which is just like the numbers. And Russia is currently backed up by the technocrats and the elites, which is making the economy keep on running. So which is interesting to see. And that also leads me to another question for you guys. So how do you think Russia's actions in Ukraine and its relations with Western countries affect the cooperation in the world, and especially as the world becomes more multipolar at this time?
Okay, so if I talk about more in with relation to economy, then right now, as you clearly told, that Russia, although there's a stagnation in economy, but it is not depleting anywhere right now. From what I have read, first of all, Russia is very self-sufficient. The import dependency of the Russia economy is relatively low, and it does not exceed the share of imports in most countries lower than what Russia imports from other countries is lower than what other countries import from Russia.
Yeah, that's for the primary sector. Secondary sector for IT, or like they're still highly dependent on China, like other countries. So that's about
that is mostly for the natural resources. And if we talk about the sanctions that have been put on Russia, like Right now, Russia is one of the world's largest natural gas, is one of the largest natural gas exporters, and a significant portion of Europe's natural gas supplies comes from Russia, primarily through pipelines that transit Ukraine. So when there are periods of tension between Russia and Ukraine, so there is threat of supply disruptions, and thus this can lead to energy shortages in Europe and driving up the natural gas prices. So, and this leads to panic buying, and this drives up the prices. So, and sanctions on Russia, it has weakened its attempt on Ukraine, but they are not very successful, because Russia it has been continuously able to buy oil. Sorry, it has been continuously able to sell oil to other markets. India, China, Turkey, Middle East, Latin American, African nations have been trading with Russia for a long time. So like West is just a part of the overall economy. So this and for sanctions, for putting more sanctions, like the West has to more countries have to participate with America and the EU for keeping for putting on more sanctions. And this needs more negotiation. So and
Yeah. Revati, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Ravi. I think it's really nice that you raise the world, because currently, going by what Vladimir Putin has said, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. It's cutting a bit, but you're audible.
Okay. So going by what Vladimir Putin has said in his words explicitly, Russia is not willing to negotiate. Uh, Countries such as France, which tried to play mediator between Ukraine and Russia, they've tried to bring them to the negotiating table. But Vladimir Putin has explicitly said either NATO recedes to 1990 levels and there is no more NATO expansion, and we get a guarantee that Ukraine does not become a NATO member, there will be no negotiation. So there's many countries have tried to broker a ceasefire. That's not happened. But I think this is a double-edged sword, because what it's doing is, by not cooperating, Russia is sort of alienating itself from the world. It's getting to a point where the EU has now become extremely wary of Russia. Before the European war, after Crimea happened, they became wary, but that was kind of offset by Donald Trump's unpopularity. He came to Ukraine. America and NATO relations were fraught, to say the least. They weren't. France, Marie Le Pen, one of her electoral promises was that she would pull out of NATO. So NATO America ties were not very strong. But suddenly with the threat of Russia, now the entire European Union perceives Russia to be an aggressor, and they're taking preventive and protective steps. And so Russia, this has become an extremely dangerous situation for Russia politically, because first of all, within a year of them fighting, Finland has already become a member of NATO, firstly. And second of all, Ukraine has been fighting for European Union membership for such a long time, which they've been denied persistently. Now, now that they've been attacked by Russia and people view Russia as an aggressor, the EU has now obtained the status of a candidate nation for the European Union. Uh, the EU has now obtained the status of a candidate nation, and 10 out of 31 NATO countries have given their consent for Ukraine becoming a NATO member, an official NATO member. So I think this is completely politically backfired for Russia. And so what they're doing is, with lack of exports of crude oil, political alienation, being cornered, no proper support, they're in a stalemate with Washington. What's happening is that I think they're being pushed more and more towards China's sphere of influence, and that's extremely dangerous, because however much America tries not to cooperate, they try and brainwash their European allies not to touch Russia, not to do business with them. A Russian-Chinese alliance is also not something America wants right now, especially because once you have India, Russia, China in one block, that basically cements that basically shifts the entire global axis of power from the west to straight to the east. So I think America needs to be, Europe as a whole with America, NATO needs to handle the situation really smartly. I think that complete seclusion and pushing Russia out of the room is not the answer. Whereas they, at this point in time, if they instead of fighting with a very short-term vision of just winning this battle, which is Ukraine, they need to think long-term and think about the possible repercussion of Russia being pushed completely into China's sphere of influence, which is way worse than just losing the Ukraine war at this point. So I think Washington and Brussels as together they need to think long term. If Joe Biden is smart, which I'm sure Washington will realize in time, what they need to do is instead of pushing Russia out of the room, they need to bring them to the negotiating table, work out a list of concessions, and work out a deal, possibly an armistice. That's what they did in Korea in 1953, and it's proved to be very effective. Today, North Korea and South Korea have whatever definition of peace that they have. It's not hot war between the Koreas, and I think that armistice was successful to the extent that it was. And I think a similar situation is possible in Ukraine, but it will require concession and sacrifice. And that is what Washington should work towards. Alienating Russia in this case for a better long term plan is not the solution. They need Russia at the negotiating table.
I absolutely agree. And I also feel like Security Council of the United Nations should have also played a more active role in the whole situation, because it's not only like two powers, because there's no way that we can have a multipolar system. Russia and USA have always existed. And if that goes to multipolar, that would create a lot of challenges for other developing countries. So that is a lot of things to manage, and especially we have India, the IMI corridor, and we have other channels that is being in the competition. So the whole situation has become more complicated. I think to like conclude this session today and combine all the thoughts, I would just ask like, how do you think that the role of Russia and the BRICS nations collectively influences emerging order? Maybe you would like to quickly add like one or two sentences.
I think,
Neil, do you want to take this one first?
yeah, I'll take it first. I think, as you told that, like right now, if you in UNSC, Russia has the veto power. So, like, there's always that Russia could veto it. So, and in where if there are, I think UN had major role to play over here, but it was not able to, because of the veto power of Russia, veto power that Russia had, and then the and in UNGA, like all of the few countries did not put sanction and all of those things due to their own personal interest. But one major thing that I personally feel is like now I think dheere dheere, like slowly and slowly, gradually, multipolar order is going to come, and like hegemony of West is decreasing, it's reducing a lot. So it's better if a country does not pick sides, going for West or going for China, rather than it sticks to its own foreign policy, and things like and uh, deals with the nations more diplomatically, looks for its own self-interest rather than just choosing sides. So that is what I would like to conclude for this.
That's great. And it was a very engaging discussion. I think Revati is still joining. Maybe she just wants to add a point.
I'm
All done?
done. I
Would you
think the
like to
internet.
conclude? That's all
Okay.
right. I was just concluding the session. And I think I'd like to conclude today's roundtable discussion on a very good note. And if anyone would like to continue this conversation or ask further questions, feel free to reach out to me or one another. And thank you all for your time and expertise. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.